You guys have seen it quite a bit in the background on this channel, but today we're starting a series I've been wanting to do for a long time. We're kicking off the YZ250 Enduro build. This is my 2003 YZ250, and it's a little worse for wear. It has been since I bought it. I had sold my previous bike, a brand new CRF 450, mainly to get out of the payments, and since I wasn't really racing regularly anymore. To make sure I wasn't without a bike, I picked this up pretty cheap. Having grown tired of riding an EFI 450 at the track, I figured a two-stroke on the trails is what I really needed. And not having 10 grand to drop on a KTM 300, though I would love one someday, tweaking the steel frame two-stroke to ride in the woods is going to serve me well. Today we're going to go over the bike and see everything that's wrong with this now 18-year-old motorcycle and what I hope to do to it. So as you guys may have noticed, I like to give my stuff weird names, and this bike behind me is no different. It's named Kathy after Kathy Bates, and I got a good reason for it. The guy that I bought this bike from, when he was showing it to me, he was hobbling around in 2 casts. It was new to him. He took it out into the woods and did just like a really steep, punchy hill climb thing, and at the top, it kicked him out. He divorced the bike in midair. He fell down like 15 feet and snapped both legs. So the reason why I named it Kathy Bates is because she is in the movie Misery, and her character breaks that dude's legs, like both of them at the same time. So, Kathy. Anyway, let's take a look at the bike. Although Kathy was in running condition when I bought it, the first thing you'll notice now is the lack of motor. Don't worry, it has one, I just have to pull it out of this bin. This is the main reason why I parked the bike in the first place. I started hearing some noise, which was very light, but it sounded either like a light piston slap or the crankcase bearings were starting to go. I don't know any of the history of this bike, so I thought it'd be best to do a total rebuild before taking this thing deep into the woods. It's had a new bottom end in it at some point, as you can see by the Pro X piston rod, which is good, but I'm not happy with the sound coming from the crank bearings right now. Also, during the only race I've ever done on this bike, about 10 minutes in, the cylinder head gasket failed and dumped coolant into the case. So instead of wondering if things are going to hold up after sitting for a couple of years, we're just going to rebuild it. The top end is tired on this bike too, and I'm a little suspicious if the cylinder is still good. I'm hoping that it'll spec out fine, but a new piston is definitely in order. And to make it better suited for trails, I'm looking at putting a wide ratio gear set in this while I have the bottom end open. Moving on to the chassis, we'll be stripping it down to the frame for some new powder coat since it's obviously been spray painted once in its life. One thing that I did have to fix right away though was to replace this swing arm and linkage. The original swing arm on it was worn out by the chain. This chain guide here is easy to neglect, and if you do, it'll start shaving metal just like this. The wear marks went all the way through to the bearings, so replacement was needed. And the old linkage was kind of a mystery to me. It looks like it was off of a 2009 or newer 4-stroke chassis. So the ratio was way off and the bolts weren't even the same size. Not to mention the bearings were rusted in and pretty much dust. So a couple of eBay pieces later and those problems were solved. For the wheel set, I want to switch out the 19-inch rear for an 18-inch so I can mount a beefier tire. It's pretty rocky and shaly here in North Idaho, so running a moose tube and a bigger back tire is probably a good idea. We'll be freshening up the brakes because, as you can see, the fluid in them is nearly black. Not a good sign. Fingers crossed that it's just a simple fluid change and that I won't need to totally rebuild the calipers. As dorky as I think they look on this bike, I'll be adding an oversized gas tank to throw on for longer rides. It's hard to look cool with no gas 20 miles from the truck. The exhaust pipe on this bike is pretty unhappy. It's been tacked together time and time again, kind of bent, and the silencer is chewed up too, missing an entire mount, and it has a gouge in it, I'm pretty sure from when the dude broke his legs. But the nicest thing on this bike is the suspension. A common thing to do with these older bikes is to do a KYB SSS swap, but I ended up deciding against doing that and rebuilding what it had. They've been completely built with Race Tech parts by C&M Racing Suspension up in Hayden, Idaho. I've been going to these guys for like 15 years now, and they always come back in amazing shape. I haven't ridden the bike yet with this fresh suspension, but it was totally wrecked before, so I'm excited for this spring when I can finally try it out. I bought this bike with the hope that I could make it compete with the newer KTMs and Huskies for a fraction of the price. Yes, I know those bikes are far superior, but I still hold true to the fact that it's not necessarily the bike, it's the rider. If I have something solid and dependable to ride, I can improve my riding skills. And with a little massaging, we'll be able to make this legendary motocross bike keep up with those newer orange and white bikes of today. I already have a few parts on order so we can get started on this thing right away. I've shied away from dirt bikes for the past couple of years, but we're changing that starting now. So for the next episode in the series, we're going to tear this bike all the way down, inspect the frame, make sure everything's good, and then start our parts list because we're going to need to buy a lot of things to make sure this is in ship shape. I'm not just going to replace stuff because it has some scratches in it. It's going to be a usable bike. It's going to be rough around the edges, but still look good. So I'm excited to really tear into this thing. It's been a long time coming, and I hope you guys enjoy it as well. Stay up to date on this thing, subscribe, follow the playlist that I made, the YZ250 Enduro build, and yeah, just gotta wait for some parts to come and we can tear into this. So thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep that rubber side down.